Welcome back to another edition of Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. That's your second-seeded, 2 inches away from being the number 1 seed Green Bay Packers in the NFC playoffs. And they're coming off a wild game that we have to talk about. But your feelings and your thoughts on, first off, how close they got to that number 1 seed, and were you disappointed, or were you just kind of like, it's okay?
Well, it's funny because I started watching that game because I got home late, and I watched like the last couple seconds or whatever, last minute of that game, where there was like the pass interference that wasn't called, and then something else happened, and they got the ball down to like the 1 yard line, and then in typical Seahawks fashion, they didn't know what the heck they were doing, and they had to delay a game. They were going to run the ball, but then they didn't have anybody out there, but then they had a guy out there, but then they didn't know what they were going to do. And I was like, I thought for sure they were going to win. And I was like, all right, Packers number 1 seed. Seahawks blew it. Should have won that game easy. And the 1 yard line, just run Marshawn Lynch up the gut, but then they had to delay a game, screw it up. Whatever, second seed. That just means that the Packers, when they win, then they got to go to San Francisco and exercise the demons. And that first time they put in San Francisco, they're going to have to just suck it up and smack them in the face if they get that far. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves here.
All right, well, I got some interesting things here, because when I made some notes, and I sent a text to myself, to my other phone, so I could have notes as the game was going on, so I wouldn't lose, certain thoughts I had. And then I went back and looked at that text, and they were almost all negative notes. And I was like, can't just talk about that. But here's the deal. I'm going to rattle off some of these negatives so we can get them out of the way. We might have a couple takes here, because there is a light that's out there that's shining in the distance. There is reason to believe in the Packers. I know they just barely squeaked out another win against Detroit, who only has 3 wins, and I'll give you a little bit on that too, as well, to make you feel better about that win, and then I'll make you feel better about the Packers' chances in the playoffs. But here's the deal. So many long passes. We don't know why, because they weren't working. And we didn't know why. We're watching the game. We're thinking, why do you keep chucking the ball 40 yards downfield all the time? It's not working. You're not connecting on them. Like, what's the deal? Well, we did get a bit of an answer from Matt LaFleur on Monday's press conference when the media kind of asked him about it. They didn't point blank ask him, but they roundabout kind of asked him about that. And what LaFleur said is, watching the tape, they knew Detroit sat on routes. And so they knew, based on that coverage, there were going to be opportunities to hit long passes. And there are always different layers to the pass plays. There's always a short option, and not always, but normally they have one in there. But if the coverage jumps that and dictates throwing over the top, you throw over the top. And the Packers had plenty of opportunities to hit some home run plays in that game, but they did not, because Aaron Rodgers played his worst game I've ever seen him play. And the stats aren't going to look as bad as some other games, but that was by far Rodgers' worst game of his career. And as a person who's seen every game of his career, I can tell you that. We can go back and forth on whether or not we agree with that approach based on the coverage, because even though the defense wants to play you a certain way, and you and I have talked about this before, how, yes, sometimes the way a defense plays, you want to counter that with a different approach or different tactic. But if you're doing something and it's working, you also can just do that. And the Packers showed that they could throw quick pass game, and it was effective. So why they abandoned it and went back to long passes, I don't know. But anyway, way too many long passes. Way too many. Especially when you're not hitting them.
Well, I guess we're going to do the un-Nito stats of the week already.
Ooh, already? Okay.
Because you're bringing it up. So here's the first usually it's the Nito stats of the week. This week it's the un-Nito because they suck. There are 2 bad stats. Aaron Rodgers was 6 of 25 on passes of 15 or more yards in the air in a game against Detroit. 6 of 25. 25 attempts with 15 or more air yards in that game.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he missed on 19 of them. That is not good. 2 of them were for touchdowns. That's 2 out of 25 attempts that were touchdowns. And one of them was a pick. Because the one to Kumaro where he underthrew him, that's 19 times you don't connect. If it was 1st and 10, that turned it into 2nd 10. If it was 2nd and 8, that turned it into 3rd and 8. And if it was 3rd and 4, why are you throwing the ball more than 15 yards downfield? Get the dang first down. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. It's very disturbing to me. The other thing Matt LaFleur said at that press conference is that pretty much every pass play has some sort of check down built into it.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodgers just doesn't throw it. As a matter of fact, on the interception he threw it towards Jake Kumaro and the guy picked it off, Aaron Jones was wide open 5 yards downfield over on the right side of the offense. Nobody within 5-10 yards of him. Rodgers didn't look over there. Not once. Now we're going to get to one more unneedle stat. Here it is.
Okay.
This is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
According to ESPN, Aaron Rodgers had 16 overthrows in the game against the Lions. That's just overthrows. That's not even underthrows. That's overthrows. So 16 overthrows. Those 16 overthrows are the most by any quarterback since the stat started being kept in 2006. So not only was that Aaron Rodgers' worst game, that was the worst game of all time. Think about that.
I don't know if I go that far.
16 overthrows.
I don't know if I go that far because he rebounded and made some really good plays as well. But
fine, but he had 16 overthrows.
I know.
16. He was 6 of 25 on passes of 15-plus air yards in the air.
I know.
Why are we throwing the ball downfield? Not only that, how many times did he overthrow Aaron Jones? He's overthrowing tight ends.
Yep.
He's underthrowing tight ends. He underthrew Tanyan and over the middle of the field late in the game.
Yeah, he just threw behind him a little bit. I
mean, what is going on? Last week he was throwing behind guys and now he's overthrowing guys. He's underthrowing guys. Chris Sims said it on his podcast yesterday. He said it looks like Rodgers is trying to throw this perfect lob pass or something like that instead of just going back and just ripping it. He's trying to do a perfect little I don't know. He's sometimes you just gotta let it go. And Rodgers is doing too much of this, trying to make a perfect pass when he should just let it go.
Well, in some of the cases, I would agree with that. But a bunch of those deep passes that were overthrows, especially in the first half, he was just uncorking those things. He was just letting them fly and driving the ball. It was way too far. It looked like the old Favre days where you just chuck it up there just to kind of keep him honest or make him think about it, and you don't hit on him. And it was just, I mean, he was off. And like I said, it's the worst game I've ever seen him play. Throw the football anyway. And I don't know. And then on top of it, there was also another game note is the play clock. And I just don't understand it. Packer fans have talked about it for such a long time. The media has asked Rodgers, has asked LaFleur about it. They don't come out strong enough and ask. They ask more about tempo and different things like that, and and not getting into that rhythm. And then they always give the same answer. The Packers do, which is just kind of gloss over it and don't really address it. But how in the world are the Packers almost always snapping the ball with 2, 1, or 0 seconds on the play clock when every other team they play, that's a rarity? For the Packers, that's almost every play. It's a problem. It makes you predictable. It also, you saw a couple times where they actually went early and it helped because the other team wasn't set up. But that gives the other team so much time to figure out. They get all their communication down. They know exactly what they're doing. They can look and see some keys from the Packers offensive formation. Like, why? Why do you want to give him that much time? I know you're trying to figure it out and get in the perfect blade, make the check and this and that, but it's not effective. It's just not.
It's not. But a couple weeks ago, Brian Urlacher had a quote saying that Rodgers does it because he's waiting to see what the defense is going to do.
I know. I get that.
And right before the play clock hits to 1, then the defense will show him what's going on. The problem is, by that point, when the defense moves and shows them what's going on, they may have a play that's not going to work against that defense. So what's the point? There is no point. You're right. It's dumb. We've been saying it for years. We've been saying it this whole time on the podcast. This needs to end. Let's do some up-tempo. Let's get in. As soon as you get it going, let's get in formation. Don't let the defense get ready. But it's not going to change. It's been 16 weeks. It's been years and years of the same thing. Rodgers keeps doing it. Just like he's throwing these deep passes. He's been doing it all year. It's 3rd and 4, and he's throwing a 45-yard bomb to somebody. And why? Just get the dang first down.
Yeah. Well,
so
part of that, too, I think.
It's fundamental things that need to change. And LaFleur needs to sit him down and be like, dude, I understand. Maybe the coverage is dictating you throw a 45-yard bomb, but apparently it's not. Because the guy's either not open or you're missing the throw. So stop doing it for now.
It's a lot hard. It's a lot harder to hit those plays 40 yards downfield than it is to hit a play 5 yards downfield. So they showed you. They showed you that. They showed you they can do it. They showed you they can throw short passes and have a drive that goes down the field. They showed you that. So just do it. Do that more. I'm not saying don't throw the long ones sometimes, but you don't need to throw them so often, and you don't need to run the play clock down all the time. It's just, that was crazy stuff. All right, I want to get through a couple other things. Okay, we talked after the Viking game how we thought they finally got it. They finally figured out that it's got to be Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, and they stuck with that at least in Detroit. Allen Lazard is clearly the number 2 receiver and clearly a guy they're counting on and made some awesome plays. But then there was a resurgence of a lot more Gmo and MVS in this game and not enough Kumaro in the game against the Lions, where as in against the Vikings, we saw that very different play distribution. And MVS did okay, and Gmo's really slow, but he did some good things here and there. But again, had some plays where, once he changes direction, he can't get started again. He just can't change direction and get moving. And so then he loses any advantage he had. So that's why some of those pass plays don't work for him, like we've talked about with the quick screens and all that good stuff. So that's puzzling. Another puzzling thing was that there was no Bob Tonyan on offense in the first half of this game. There was Jace Sternberger, a whole lot of Jace Sternberger instead of Tonyan, yet Tonyan was playing special teams. So the media, no one asked this question. No one brought this up at all, which drives me crazy because I wanted an answer. Why was Bob Tonyan not on the field on offense in the first half? What happened? Did he miss a meeting? Did he miss curfew? Was there something else that took place? Because that is what I noticed. And it impacted their offense. Case in point, if the first pass of the game, if that's Bob Tonyan running up the seam and not Jimmy Graham, that's not a drop. And maybe a huge play, like 40, 50-yard play. I don't get it. And he played the most snaps at tight end the week before against the Vikings, and then you come the very next week and he doesn't play a single snap on offense in the first half, and yet no one asks about it, and there's no explanation given? Like, I don't get it, but I want an explanation because that's your best tight end right there. He's your best tight end. They all have places, Mercedes Lewis, and Ben, even Jimmy Graham. I don't know if you got to see this play or not, but Jimmy Graham showed us what his best offensive route is, what his best pass route is. Do you know what it is?
Shallow cross.
Nope. It was one of his catches in the game.
I don't know.
He chipped and blocked for a couple seconds and then just moved out to his right and sat there in the right flat. And when nobody's open down the field, but everybody cleared everybody away. Rodgers threw it to him, and he ran for a first down. So that is Jimmy Graham's best play. Chip and block for a couple seconds, then move out to one side or the other and just sit there and be a safety valve. Even he has a place. But Bob Tonyan is clearly your most dynamic, trusted, best tight end, and he didn't see the field in the first half. And I want to know why. So if you are listening to this and you know why, or you have an idea or a thought on how that is even possible, please put it in the comments. Because I would entertain any explanation, because it doesn't make any sense to me at all. Any ideas, Ben?
Nope. Just dumb moves.
Okay. That's all the negatives I've got. I mean, the defense had some struggles here and there.
The run defense was pretty bad. Tackling was pretty bad.
But they turned it around when they needed to. The one other glaring difference for the defense was they thoroughly dominated the line of scrimmage against the Vikings. And this week against Detroit, nobody except Zadarius Smith could get pressure. Kenny Clark was being handled by one guy most of the time. Preston Smith, very quiet. Dean Lowry, no push. Tyler Lancaster, no push. Like, Zadarius Smith was the only guy that could generate pressure for the Packers in this game. Tell me why. Is the Lions' offensive line that much better than the Vikings' offensive line? Like, what? What's the difference? I don't get it. But it makes me a little scared, because if Zadarius Smith gets injured or gets hurt or whatever during the game and he goes out, does that mean you have nothing? Does that mean you're back to zero pass rush like we've seen in years past? That's a scary thought. It was definitely clear the results were they didn't do much on the defensive line. But it also appeared like it just wasn't the same sort of force from those guys, an effort from those guys. Hopefully it was just a road trip late in the season, short week, kind of a dud for the defensive line, and that hopefully does not happen in a playoff game. But I don't get the difference there either.
The thing is, in the Vikings game, even in that Vikings game, it was mostly Zadarius Smith destroying everybody too. So I don't know. There were a couple plays I watched where he blitzed on the outside and they just ran up the gut. So that was due to passing play. A lot of big runs, dude. Right up the gut, over and over and over. And I was like, wow. And then even at that play at the end of the half there, where he had Jair Alexander spinning backwards, looking over this shoulder, looking over that shoulder, ran 20 yards, and it was just ridiculous. I was like, what is going on? And there's a play I watched where Savage comes up on the outside, perfect shot on the ball carrier, he doesn't wrap him up.
Yep.
Missed the tackle. The guy runs for another 7 yards. Like, what is going on? I mean, I know that Scarborough guy looks pretty big, but wrap him up. I'm really positive here for a little bit.
Okay, it's time to turn it.
In the highlights that they showed, I want to give a shout out to Chandon what's his last name?
Sullivan, yeah. You got it. Chandon Sullivan.
Yeah, Sullivan, yeah. 39?
Yep.
Is that it? There were numerous third downs passes that were broken up by him. Now, I don't know if he was holding the guy and they didn't call it. I have no idea. But in that fourth quarter, he had at least 2 third down stops that led to punts. And that's something for a guy who, who's kind of a tweener. They don't know if he's corner or safety. He's kind of just he's almost like a Micah Hyde. He's not, Micah Hyde. We haven't had a Micah Hyde mentioned in a while. Ha, ha, ha. Anyways, but he seems to have, solidified that dime defensive back spot after Tremont. Tremont's nickel, and he's like the dime guy, and he's doing a lot of inside coverage. Those were all like middle of the field type plays, quick slants and quick passes that he was breaking up. And it's good to see a guy who's able to do that, who's physical at the line of scrimmage. Pettin said that too. He's like, hey, we put our guys and we changed some things up a little bit. We wanted to be more physical at the line of scrimmage, and they're doing a better job of doing that. That's a positive. It seems like Pettin's got the secondary playing more bump and run. It seems like Chandon Sullivan is a pretty good guy at bump and run coverage. Tremont is pretty good. And he could, when he makes plays on the ball, he almost had a pick. I thought Blake Martinez had a pretty good game. He had a couple pressures. He did. He had a huge play
when they needed it. Yeah, huge play.
Yeah, I mean, those were all So there's things there and that was in coverage. He was in like a middle zone coverage there in that play. And there's pressure from Za'Darius, so that helped in that play. So the defense, kind of got gashed in the beginning. And the thing that scares me is the run defense again, right up the gut. But if you get a lead, if the offense doesn't come out and take a dump right away like they did, and actually start putting some points on the board, that's when the Packers defense is at its best spot, right? Because then the other team's not going to be running as much anymore because they need to pass. And then you let Za'Darius go nuts, and then the other guys in the secondary can play bump and run and make some plays, and that's where we need to be. There's been a lot of improvement over the last couple of weeks, with the defense. And yeah, they're playing against quarterbacks who aren't the best in the world. That's true. But they've got to be. The key to beating these teams is to do what your guys do best. And when you're playing soft zones, you're not going to do anything. You got to play bump and run. You got to play man, and then switch it up every now and again because you can't do that the whole game, obviously. But it helps. And the positive thing with the offense is this: the plays were there. Rodgers just missed throws over and over again.
Yeah, like I said,
if he connects on it, even like half of those,
right?
they'd cream him.
Yeah.
So he's just got to get back on track.
I have to get into some positives here, and I want to tell you because there have been a lot of things said, obviously, since the game. There's been a lot of things said all year about the Packers. There's been a lot of things said about the way they're winning and this and that and whatever. Okay, now they just played the Lions. Everybody's freaking out that they got down so far, had to come back in this game and barely win it. And also the other neato stat that you didn't give, but you probably thought about giving was that the Packers, and this one's been out there a bunch, but that the Packers did not lead in a single minute against the Lions in either game, but still won both games, which is pretty wild. I don't know how many times that's happened in the history of the NFL in a year, but anyway, here's the deal with the Lions. So this is why I want you to take a little bit from that. Now, the Lions, yes, their record is terrible, right? 3-12-1. 3-12-1. 3-11-1 going into this game. 3-12-1 on the season. You think that's a terrible team. And we heard Mo talk about it, Viking Mo last week. They're not losing to Detroit, third-string quarterback. They're horrible. Nobody cares about Detroit. They're a terrible team. But the Lions have 8 losses by a touchdown or less. That's not a bad football team. That's a football team that doesn't quite know how to win. But it doesn't mean they're not a talented football team. Their record stinks, but they're in a bunch of games and against quality opponents too. That's a little perspective for you, so hopefully you don't freak out so much that the Packers struggle with them a little bit. The other thing is, I told you going to Detroit, it's weird. Weird stuff happens. The Packers have struggled there a number of times. And yes, they had some good moments there, but it's in these division rivalries, it happens. Nobody can explain exactly why, but teams get up for certain games. Teams might have not the same quite of energy and focus for certain games, even though you want to. Even though as a human you want to, as a person you want to, as a football player, as a professional, all of that you want to. It happens at every level of competition of every sport. You see these things happen. I played only in high school, but it happened to us. Like we had a really good year my senior year of high school. We had a very good team, and we played one of the worst teams in the conference, and we should have blown them out, and we didn't. We won by a couple of touchdowns, and we struggled most of that game. And everybody's looking around, like as a player, you're on the field and you're thinking, what's happening here? And you're trying to figure it out. The coaches are trying to figure it out, but there's just something missing and you can't figure out why. And at the same time, the other team maybe is having their best game, or maybe they're just really up for that game. But that can happen in sports. It can happen in life, but it definitely happens in sports all the time. That's why you see some of these teams that seem like they're not as good of a team, beat other teams and that sort of stuff, or play them really close or whatever. The key point is the Packers still won. They still found a way to win. And that is the trademark of this team. That's their identity.
Look at the Patriots and the Dolphins yesterday.
Yeah,
Dolphins
I know.
Patriots.
I'm getting to it.
Look at Atlanta against San Francisco a couple weeks back. There's teams that look like they're juggernauts.
Yep.
I mean, the Ravens lost to the Browns earlier in the year. So
You're stealing all mine. But that's fine. Go ahead.
but I'm just saying, like, it happens. That stuff happens, right?
Yep.
And it all comes down to, can they focus and be on top of things for the next 3 games? If they can be focused for 3 games, they win it all. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what happened anymore. It didn't matter how they won. The good news is they know how to win, and they can do it in multiple ways. The key is when something happens, like happened in San Francisco the first time, or against LA Chargers.
Hey, you got it right. You got it right.
Well, I still almost screwed up. But anyways, both of those times, they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback in either of those games. And one of them was Phillip Rivers, for God's sake. The guy would throw it to you 27 times, use a little pressure on him. Look at the Vikings got 7 turnovers against them. They still couldn't do any pressure on him for some unknown reason. But that was back before they started moving Zadarius all over the place. So maybe now they could, a different type of thing, they can do that. And then also in both those games, they have really, really fast pass rushers with great pass moves that the Packers could not block. And they did not adjust their scheme at all in either of those 2 games. And they got creamed in both of those games. So can they, if something's not working, adjust, which is what they kind of showed in the game against the Lions, right? Because they were trying to throw the ball deep 25,000 times. And then when they needed a drive, that 95-yard drive, they passed it short here. They got to pass to Lazard. They got to pass to Jimmy Graham. They got to pass to Mercedes. There's a pass to Geronimo in there. And then that killer double move by Devontae open for a touchdown in the corner, right? That was an awesome freaking move. Awesome play, awesome drive. Passed a whole bunch of different guys. And it was because they changed it up. And Aaron Jones had another big game again running. And he's got over 1,000 yards for the year and over 1,500 yards total offense this year. So Aaron Jones is a bona fide star. Devontae is a star. Lazard makes huge third down catches. He gets open. The receivers are blocking good. Tight ends are blocking good. Everybody's working together most of the time. If Rodgers would have just been a little more accurate, they would have creamed them. So that's what they got to do. Moving forward. Whoever they get, right?
Yep. All right, I want to finish this part because this is kind of part 2 of that feel good about the Packers' chances here. And then I got to give you the X factor. The X factor is the thing you should believe in the most. But here's another calm yourself down Packers fans statistic here. Well, examples. Now I looked at a bunch of the playoff teams. Okay? I got the Packers, the Chiefs, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Saints, the Patriots, the Vikings, and the Ravens. Okay? And here, now, everybody's flipping out because the Packers won so many ugly games, right? So there were close games. A lot of close games, not enough blowouts. All right, let me take a look at, so I looked at all this. The Packers had 8 games of 7 points or less that they were involved in. So half of their games, so touchdown, an extra point or less. The Chiefs had 9. Yet everybody's saying the Chiefs are great. Sure, they blew a few more teams out, but they actually had one more tight game than the Packers had. And yes, the Packers lost to the Chargers, but the Chiefs lost to the Titans and the Colts. And they're okay teams. One of them barely squeaked in the playoffs. The other one didn't. And Ben and I were talking about before about some of the bad losses. I'm going to give you the bad losses as I go through this. The Seahawks, we knew about them, right? They had 11 games this year. 11 games there were touchdown or less games. Now, they won a bunch of them. But they also had a 27-13 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. Does that mean they're a terrible team? Everyone should freak out? That's a Seahawks fan? Think they have no chance in the playoffs? No. The 49ers, right? Who were everywhere. They're the best team, blah, 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 for most of the year, all this sort of stuff. Yes, they blew the Packers out. But the 49ers also had 8 games. The same amount of games as the Packers that were 7 points or less. And the 49ers lost to Atlanta 29-22 at home. At home. Which nearly cost them the number 1 seed. The Saints had 7.
Should have cost of that.
Yeah, the Saints had 7. And the Saints, man, we love the Falcons. The Saints also lost to the Atlanta Falcons 26-9 earlier this year. Does that mean the Saints are a terrible team, that they have no chance in the playoffs? No. It's just what we were talking about before. These things happen. The Patriots had 7 as well. 7 games, just one less game than the Packers that were that close. And they just lost to the Fitzmagical Dolphins in Week 17 to lose the first round bye that they had all locked up if they could just win that game. So now for the first time in 10 years, the Patriots are going to have to play in the first round of the playoffs.
And they're going to lose because they're playing Titans, and
that would
Vrabel
be awesome. That'd be
knows
awesome.
what's going on. He used to be a Patriot, so he knows how to stop them.
So that would be awesome. Now these are all the reasons why you should feel better. The Vikings, well, we don't think they're that big of a threat in the playoffs, but they had 6 games of 7 points or less, with just 2 less to the Packers. Plus, they lost to the Bears 16-6 this year, but they still have a chance. And the Ravens, who have been the best team all year long, right? They beat the Patriots. They beat all these teams. The Ravens had 6 games, so only 2 less than the Packers that were that close. But the Ravens lost to the Browns 40-25 at one point this year. 40-25, they lost to the Browns, who just fired their first-year coach so they could hire Mike McCarthy. I don't know if that's official.
I think Mike McCarthy is going to be Dallas Cowboys head coach.
I don't think so. I think he's going to the Browns. Anyway, the Ravens, who have been the most dominant team all year long, have a 40-25 loss to the Browns on their season total this year. Does that mean we should freak out? No. For the reasons that the Lions played all those close games, just had a bad record, and then all those playoff teams. Those are all playoff teams, by the way. I didn't look at all the other teams. Those are the playoff teams. Some had more, some had the same, some had 1 or 2 less close games than the Packers. So that should all make you feel better, Packers fans, about their chances in the playoffs. And the Packers finished 13-3. That is their best record since 2011. And that's the first time they've finished with that high of a record since the back-to-back 96-97 seasons. So give a little love for winning 13 games. Like, I get it. I get what we all saw in Detroit. But this team figures it out. Like, they're resilient. They bounce back. They don't give up. All the things that they've said are true about their team. And that's the character part. That's the part that ultimately has helped them overcome some of these performances or some of these slow starts or whatever. But it helps get them over the hump and win the game in the end, and they believe in it. And the belief part is the other thing. The X factor and the reason why, this is the other big reason and the main reason why you should believe in the Packers this postseason. And it is their belief in themselves and their closeness. They've talked about, remember how, Ben, early in the season when Aaron Rodgers was at, talking after games, and he talked about the closeness of the team, or it feels, just different and all this sort of stuff. And a lot of media members and Chris Carter, and who used to be on a TV show, and luckily isn't anymore, and some other people were all saying how, he's just saying that to, he's saying that on purpose to make it seem like it's so much better than it was when McCarthy was there, and some other things and whatever. I thought there was some ulterior motive behind it and all this sort of stuff about him saying that. But the truth is, it wasn't that at all. He was just honestly, it was a new feeling. They hadn't had that type of closeness as a team in a very long time. And part of that is the players that are now there, the way they've bonded, the way they bought in with the new approach and new coaching staff. Yes, all that factors in, but it's different. And it's genuine. Like you watch like some of the post games speeches after and things like that. And it's not really the speech, but you watch how the people interact, the players interact. You look at them on the sidelines. You look at some of those things, and you can see it. They are just closer. They believe in each other, and they back each other up. And when you are like that, and they talk about it, Mercedes Lewis talks about it all the time about family. That's what his breakdown is in the huddle, is family. And so for family, what do? You're there for them. You rely on them, they rely on you, and you fight for them. And that's what this team does. And that is the X factor of this team. And that's why you should believe they have as good a chance as anybody, even if they might not be as talented in some areas, to actually win this whole thing. What do you think, Ben?
I'm not as positive as I was last week after the Vikings game where they creamed the crap out of them, but they need to be more selective on when they go for the deep shot. That's all I'm asking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be smarter. Take shots, yes, but not so many. You've got good plays. You've got good players. Like that screen pass at the end of the game. They weren't ready for that. The Lions were not ready. And even though the Packers didn't block it well at all,
nobody blocked pretty much on that play.
Nobody blocked. Guys are falling down. It was like I don't know what was going on in that play. But luckily, Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones, and he just and next thing you know, he's down 30-some yards downfield. And it's just get the ball to the guys who can make plays, please. You don't have to throw a 25-yard pass to Aaron Jones as he's running out of the backfield for a deep pass. I mean, if it works, great. But run a screen to him. You watch him run for 30-some yards against Kansas City. They did that wide receiver screen on the outside, right? When he's led wide receiver and he ran for a freaking touchdown. I mean, it doesn't have to be 25, 30 yards in the air. It can be a dump off that goes for a touchdown.
Well, did
you get it to the right players?
Did you hear that though? Like why they didn't run any screens? So they had said
no.
So LaFleur had said, because they asked him about it, because Aaron Rodgers called that play. Which we were beating up on Aaron Rodgers before about how bad a game he had, but he called that play and he made that play work because it was not set up well, and he had pressure on him right away because the inside guy let his guy go right away, and
Jenkins let his guy go.
He had to buy time and then make like a sidearm kind of crazy throw in there, so that was a heck of a play by him too.
Yes, it was.
But the coaching staff looked at it and they said this is a team who's really good against screens. And because the Lions defensive linemen read them well and react well, and then they also sit more up. They don't drift back and play deep. So that's why they didn't call any screens in the game before then. And Rodgers said, I think it's time for a screen. Like we haven't done one all day. I'm just feeling like it's a good time for a screen here. If you watch Aaron Jones' interview after, that was pretty cool what he said to him, because he just said Rodgers came in the huddle and he said, what do you guys think about a screen? I think it's about time for a screen here. And then he looked at Aaron Jones, and then Aaron Jones was like, yeah, and he got excited. And then he said, and Aaron Jones said, he said, yep, yes, sir. He's like, go make a play, kid. And he's like, yes, sir. He told him, like he always says, yes, sir, all the time. And then he did, and they did. And that's part of the Rodgers factor too. It's like, okay, we understand this team is supposed to be really good against this play, so we're not going to do it. And that's one of the things about coaches sometimes that I'm like, I get you want to try to give your team an advantage and you see things other teams do well and you try to do something else that's not going to play into their strength. But at the same time, if there's some things that you're good at and you have dynamic players like Aaron Jones and a screen pass is an easy way to get him the ball, you just have to execute better. You just have to be better. Like, do what you want and just be better than that team on that play. And sometimes coaches get into that and they don't want to do it. In this case, Rodgers called for it, and he made it work. I appreciate that a lot, and I also know that if that was anybody but Aaron Jones, it wouldn't have worked, but it did work because Aaron Jones is awesome. So, but I mean, I don't know. What do you think about the family part and the belief part? I think it's a huge factor on his team, as I dictated earlier.
I think it's good that they got each other's backs. It seems like they're like Aaron Jones said something after the Vikings game where at halftime they didn't go in there and they weren't all fired up and yelling at each other for drops and getting down on each other. They were being positive and being like, okay, guys, this is what we got to do. So we got to do. So I'm assuming the same thing they did against the Lions. They just were calm and figured out what we had to do to win the game and go out there and execute. Sometimes, though, I think the family and the belief and all that kind of stuff can make you be like, oh, well, I believe that we can just do it. And then sometimes maybe they don't work as hard. And that's the problem. Or they show up and it's just a little, they're just a little bit off or whatever it is. Is the family and all that and the belief, detriment, or is it something where it's always positive? You got to find the fine line there. And sometimes I think they get a little too ahead of themselves thinking that they're doing good, and then the details aren't always there. Every play should be treated as if it's the last play of the game. Every play should have the urgency of the last play of the game. And sometimes I don't see that. You're not seeing urgency in the tackling. We're not seeing urgency in blocking. There was a blitz that happened that on third down when Rodgers got sacked, where Bakhtiari just let the safety go. Aaron Jones picked up the guy on the outside, and there was 4 guys coming, and there was just Bakhtiari and Jenkins and Jones to cover those 4 guys. And Bakhtiari just let the safety go instead of trying to get in the way. And I don't know why. Now, it's 4-3, and somebody should have saw the blitz, and Rodgers didn't see the blitz. But the guy came so fast, and nobody touched him. And that's one of those things where it's like, what are we doing? Are we looking at this stuff? Are we recognizing the blitz? Are we working together on this? And I know it doesn't have anything to do with family and belief and all this other stuff. But sometimes family and belief can only get you so far. You got to go X's and O's. You got to go strategy. You got to go doing your job, being consistent. On defense, making sure you're not out of position. You have good communication. On offense, you also have good communication when there's a blitz. Guys working together. They can't let that happen. They can't let a firestorm blitz happen on 3rd and 4 and Rodgers gets sacked within 1 second of him going back there. Can't happen. I think the difference between the family aspect as opposed to the previous years is there's a lot of young guys on the team. There's a lot of guys who haven't had success yet. Like a lot of these guys that have been with the Packers have only been there for 2-3 years, and this is the first time they've been in the playoffs. Or there's guys like Preston Smith, who was with the Redskins, but they weren't any good, right? So Darius Smith's coming from the Ravens, who were usually in the playoffs, but he was a part-time guy. He wasn't a main guy. So this allows him to have his personality kind of go through the team, and he's a big factor. And then for guys like Mercedes, who was in purgatory with the Jaguars for years and years and years, and now he's on a 2nd seed, win the division type team. That's a key role for him, which helps those young guys maybe see how important it is for him and for Rodgers and all these guys that are, and Tremont. Like last week, Tremont didn't put his shirt and hat on. He just put it right in his suitcase right away. Because he's like, I got bigger things than the NFC North title, and that's what the shirt says too. But Tremont was the one guy who didn't put his shirt on because he's looking for more. And that family aspect, I think it could take him to the next level. So yes, I agree. It's a big thing, that family and togetherness. I just don't want to see him get complacent or start thinking that, okay, this family that we have, this, like, we're there for each other and we'll make sure something will happen and we'll get it going. And then maybe the urgency isn't there. They need to have the urgency and then use that family aspect of the team to put them over the top.
Yeah, I see that. The one thing I'll say is I would not anticipate the Packers blowing anybody out in this playoffs. So if you're a Packers fan, gear up, gear up for some nail biters again. I like the way this team is built. I like the way they battle. And, I was thinking about this too, because you hear, all these other people and talking about who's likely to win and the Super Bowl picks out of the teams and all this sort of stuff, and a bunch of people saying the Packers are the most likely team to lose of any of the bye teams and all that stuff. But what were people saying? So people are raving about the Ravens and the Saints and the 49ers and the Chiefs now. They've been on a little hot streak. But what were people saying about the 15-1 Packers in 2011? The same stuff, right? And And what happened to them? That's why you just don't know. And everyone really does have a chance. Like when they say that, it's true. It's not just lip service. Everyone really does have a chance because all the teams are good and you don't know what's going to play out in the game. Is the other team going to make some mistakes? Are they going to make some critical turnovers or errors or blunders or whatever? Are they going to not deal with the cold well when this in Lambeau? So yes, the Packers could have that stuff happen to them too, but so could any other team, no matter how good they've been or how many points they've won other games by. Or even the 49ers who dominated the Packers the first time around. Could be a very different game if it happens again in the playoffs. You just got to hang in there, watch it, expect it to be a nail-biter, and if they give us a break by actually getting a nice lead on somebody and blowing them out, then we can all relax a little, but that's not the MO of this team, so expect it to be exciting one way or another. But in the end, you still expect them to win because that's what they've proven that they know how to do. 13-3, division champs, first round bye, 2 inches away from being the number 1 seed in the NFC. And it's a team that just keeps finding a way to get it done. So, enjoy it.
Let's hope they keep doing it in the playoffs.
Enjoy it.
They keep finding a way to win. It's going to be interesting because, like, all these NFC teams are really they all have flaws of some point, and they all have strengths of some point. And like I said, I'm not as worried about like the Seahawks or even the Saints coming up to Lambeau. And I know the Saints are a great defense this year, and they got a dynamic offense and all this kind of stuff. But the Saints have their strengths are actually the Packers like on offense. The Packers defense have strengths to combat that. And same thing on the Saints' strengths on defense, the Packers actually have strengths on offense that combat that. So it's like, it's different. The weirdest part is the team that scares me the most would be the Eagles. That's what scares me. Because of that the stinking two tight end set, dude, it scares the crap out of me.
They still got the Schwartz, though.
I really hope I really hope the Eagles lose. I hope that the Seahawks beat them. I really want to see the Seahawks come to Lambeau. That's what I want to see because I'm sick of having the Packers go to Seattle in the playoffs. I'd like to see Seattle come to Lambeau and watch the Packers kick the crap out of them. That's what I want to see really bad.
I don't care who they play, but I just.
But the only way that's going to happen is if the Vikings beat the Saints. So
right.
I don't know if that's going to happen. There's a lot of Viking fans in town. They don't think the Vikings have a chance against the Saints.
No.
I've been talking to a couple of people down here, and they're like, "Yeah, they got no chance." Blah blah blah. And they're down on Kirk Cousins again after that Vikings game. So
anything can happen, man. Anything.
I know.
Anything. So that's
like,
a sad.
Another Minneapolis Miracle or whatever, but this time it would be New Orleans Minneapolis Miracle, I guess. But whatever.
That's a sad way to go into a game. Think your team has no chance. I mean,
well, there's some people that think they have a chance, but I mean, most of them are just they're like, we don't got a chance. So, like, really?
That's really sad.
Are the Saints really that good? I mean,
if Cook's back there and he's running a lot, and they can run it effectively, you got a chance right there.
There was an interesting stat about Cook. He went like 10 games without having a run of more than 10 yards. So I would like to look at his stats.
Yeah, that's weird.
But I kind of want to prepare some things. I want to go through.
Yeah.
I want to maybe for next time. I wanted to look at the 3 guys that made the Pro Bowl and look at their stats at running back and compare them to Aaron Jones' stats as far as like, yards per carry, touchdowns, big plays, rushing, all that kind of stuff, and kind of see how the numbers lie there and see where they're at that way, and see who's a more dynamic player and this and that.
Well, we'll dig into some of that stuff, and of course, we'll dig into the Packers' opponent and the upcoming playoff game in the next episode. But this episode, we're really excited that the Packers are in the playoffs. Really excited that they accomplished what they did, won 13 games.
It's been 2 years of not having playoff football. It kind of sucks, and it's pretty awesome to have it back again. It's really nice around here because I live in Minnesota and wear my Packer gear, especially after I have the game there. People are mad at me and give me dirty looks, and I'm like, ha, whatever. So as long as I keep winning,
All right, we'll catch you all soon. Thanks for listening to Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Give us some comments on some of that stuff we talked about, and we will do our best to engage with your comments as well. Hope you had a good New Year's. I hope you enjoy the 2020 year, and we hope the Packers make it a nice start to 2020 for us with a big playoff win coming up soon.